And there's a paradox here because I almost think about the phrase of when we admit that we are not at peace, we become more at peace. There's
Uh-huh.
sort of a how can we recognize that sex doesn't need to look like orgasm and that's the
The
succeeding
be all
thing.
end
That's
all. Uh-huh.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's not necessarily what sex is and has to be, right? We get to define what that means.
Welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. I'm your host, Dan Purcell, a sex and intimacy coach for married couples. My mission is to help you build and maintain a sexually vibrant and emotionally intimate marriage. Join me each week as we explore principles and practical tools based on Christian values to create the passionate, joyful, and thriving marriage you're designed to have. Everyone, welcome to this Get Your Marriage On podcast episode. One very important skill that we talk about often on our podcast is what I call calming the heck down, which, put another way, is about nervous system regulation. It's about calming down what's going on inside enough for you to be fully present with your spouse and with the world around you. I'm excited to introduce my guest today, Morgan Starr-Reistis. She is an expert with nervous system regulation. In this episode, she's going to break down how our nervous system works and some real practical tools on how to calm it down so that you can be more present in the bedroom with your spouse. I invite you to try some of the tips that she offers today right away and see if you see a difference in your ability to connect and be present with your spouse in and out of the bedroom. At Get Your Marriage On, we have some pretty exciting events coming up. The first is our in-person couples retreat. This is the 4-day, 4-night romantic retreat that we're having here in southern Utah. Gorgeous outdoor and beautiful resort facilities where we do a deep dive on intimacy in your relationship. That's coming up the first week of April, and I have a spot left if you want to grab it last minute. We also have our cruise coming up this October, and we're almost sold out on that one. So if you want to come on our cruise, now's a good time to apply, and you'll find all those details at getyourmarriageon.com. Click on events and scroll down, and you'll see it there. Morgan, welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. How are you today?
Thank you. It's so good to be here. I just got off of a bunch of holidays and stuff, and so it's really nice to be grounded and
Yeah,
talking to you.
you're quite the traveler. This is kind of cool. You were recently in the New York Times or something that you said, which is like so cool to say, I've been
Thank you.
published in the New York Times. What
Thank
was
you.
that about?
That was a really cool way to bring in 2026. That was the very first day, January 1st of 2026. And I
Uh-huh.
just think it's so funny that I was in the New York Times for the first time, and the topic that I was interviewed about was raw dogging boredom. And so
Raw
I had
dogging
to,
boredom. Okay.
no, I had to explain to my mormon or my grandma what raw dogging is. I mean, at
Oh,
a bigger
okay.
trend, the raw dogging boredom is essentially this trend where people are facing boredom
Uh-huh.
to without protection. And so, I mean, the irony there, if anyone doesn't know what the vulgar term of raw dogging is the having sex without protection. So
Uh-huh.
I
Without a
had to
condom.
explain,
Uh-huh.
yes,
Yeah.
without a condom. And so I had
Uh-huh.
to explain to my more first off what raw dogging was to give her context of why we're raw dogging boredom. And the whole thing is just so funny that that's what I was in the New York Times about first. So
Of all
I
the
think it's,
things.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
out of all the things to be interviewed about around my expertise, that's what I got in for. But I love the humor around it. I think it's
Uh-huh.
so fun.
I could just imagine the look on your grandmother's face as you're explaining.
Honestly, she loved it. I mean, she's got a great sense of humor, and I think there was a fun element to it to
Mhm.
share. And honestly, my cousins were around and my parents were around too, so we all got a good kick out of her just being like, "Wait, what? Explain more. What do you mean? What is that?" So it's good. It was good.
That's so good. So your expertise is on helping people learn how to regulate themselves better, nervous system regulation. How'd you get into this?
Yeah, so I have a bachelor's degree in cognitive neuroscience, wellness, and human biology, and I got my master's degree in clinical mental health with an emphasis in somatic therapies. So I have my own story of struggling with depression and anxiety and not wanting to live at times, and a lot of perfectionism, a lot of overworking, a lot of burnout, a lot of just struggle, human things, you know?
Uh-huh.
And growing up, this was never a topic that I was ever exposed to. And so I went on my own journey as a lot of us practitioners do, and found that this overall nervous system regulation was a huge missing piece that wasn't talked about enough growing up. And so got a lot of education in that. And then I ended up creating my own model that helps people regulate their nervous system and really bridge that insight to action gap. Because so
Mhm.
many people really can understand it logically and we get it intellectually, but then we don't know how to integrate it into our bodies and how to integrate it into our day to days. And so that's a bit of what I specialize in now as well.
So tell me of a time, maybe this is when you first realized, holy smokes, this stuff is good. It helped me overcome a challenge or something where I used to flip out, but now I can hold on to myself better. Did you have an experience like that?
Oh my gosh, there's so many of them that it's hard to say like this was the exact thing, but I feel overarching a sense of flow. There's
Mhm.
more like I can feel like myself authentically. I can actually be able to listen and receive things better. I can be able to just the feeling of flow where it's not as hard as it once was. Like truly the process becomes easier of being human. It's just like
Mhm.
these moments of, wow, I'm dealing with this with way more grace and ease. And those feelings are, we want to think that it's this big fireworks and like it's just this huge thing that happens. But I feel like it's these incremental increases over time to where you end up looking back and like, wow, I would have freaked out about that, or I would have gotten completely derailed before. And now I have resilience and I'm moving through it a lot more gracefully. And I'm thinking back to there was a particular time that I would continue to sabotage. I talk about like upper limit problems. It's like we have this place of success that we think is safe, and then anything past that is scary and we don't do it. And
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I got an opportunity while I was in my undergrad to go to a modeling agency. Somebody had approached me and was like, wait, what? That's not safe. And so I did some work with my nervous system to really allow for that opportunity to land in me and
Uh-huh.
say,
Because you wanted the
okay,
modeling agency. It was just outside
it
of
was a great
your. Yeah,
opportunity.
yeah.
I had
Uh-huh.
never thought about that for myself. I had
Uh-huh.
never, bu- but when the opportunity arose, I could have sabotaged that moment, but instead, that became a way that I essentially got myself through college because I was able to afford paying for college through jobs that I was getting through that agency. And I would have said no. I would have been like, oh, who do those people think they are? Or whatever story, I
Mhm.
would have supported it with my dysregulation. But by having done some of the regulation work I had been doing at that time and really feeling more safety in my body being seen, feeling more safety in my body being successful. Some of these pieces, I would have just crushed the opportunity before even stepping into it. So that's one of
Yeah.
them that I can think of. And it takes a lot to be seen and think about walking on a runway or doing these things. It's an intense experience that I had to have had safety in my nervous system to really step into that opportunity.
Yeah, that's so good. So we want to apply this is a podcast really dedicated to married couples that want to improve their sexual relationship. And one key to good sex is learning how to regulate yourself. Can you expound on that a little bit better?
Yeah. Sex in general is a very complex topic, but at the foundation of it, in order to enjoy it, we need safety. And if
Uh-huh.
we don't feel safety in our own nervous systems, our partner is not going to also feel safety and vice versa. It's a very co-regulation thing as well. So I would say there's two elements to that is both your own nervous system and your own relationship with your body, with the topic of sexuality, safety with your partner is also important too of how are you together and what is the process of we talk about like neural synchrony. It's like
Uh-huh.
what is the ways that our nervous systems are can co-regulate with each other as well. So I think both of those topics are important.
Great. Maybe we need to back up a step and talk more about
Mhm.
just the nervous system in general.
Sure. Yeah.
Why is it that I get, I don't know, afraid when I have to speak in front of a group or meeting new people or things like that, or even in my intimate relationship? Bringing up certain topics or desires. Why does my body do that?
Mhm.
Why are we built that way?
Yeah, so I like to think of it as two parallel bars. Within
Okay.
those that parallel bar is your optimal level of functioning. This is
Okay. And
when
as you're speaking, you're holding up your hands vertically.
Mhm.
You're like, okay, you
Mhm.
have an upper limit and a lower limit. Is that what
Exactly.
you're indicating?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. And so we have everyone's window of tolerance or sort of optimal level of functioning is different sized. If you've experienced trauma, there's a lot of biological predispositions, things like that. Your window can be a little bit smaller,
Hmm.
but on the upper limit of that is called hyperarousal. So that's when your nervous system is getting into places of more anxiety or frustration or frazzled kind of energy. Where on the lower limit of that is hypoarousal. So that's a lot more shut down, lethargic, hard time getting out of bed, more depressive states. And so our nervous system is meant to function in this optimal level of functioning that's in between those two bars. But
Kind of like a
depending,
thermostat is the way I think
yep,
about it, right? Like if it
yep,
gets too hot, the air conditioning kicks on. Too low, the
mhm,
heater kicks on. We like to
mhm.
stay in this like homeostasis, this
Yes. Yeah,
this
and
range.
that would be the most ideal, right? Is that
Uh-huh.
if we can stay in that optimal level of functioning. But for whatever reasons, this is complex and nuanced. For some people, they've learned that hyperarousal is how they get their needs met, or hypoarousal is safety. Because maybe
Mm.
my dad got angry when I was young and I needed to get smaller. And so this is what safety means is that anytime there's a trigger that arises, I go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right?
Mhm.
And so those are also aligned with the hypoarousal is that shutdown, is that freeze, right? Where maybe a hyperarousal is more of that fight. So all of this is evolutionarily important for our survival and for our
Mhm.
safety at a
Mhm.
deeper level. And so you're asking, why does it happen? Well, there's a full range of reasons why we would go outside of our window of tolerance and outside of our optimal level of functioning, depending on your biological predispositions, how you were raised. But at a deeper level, it's the things that we've connected safety to and
Mm.
they're getting underlying needs met. And we've learned over time that this is how I get it met. Like I might need to yell, or I might need to get hyperactive, or I might need to overthink things in order to get that need met, or maybe I need to shut down or get smaller in a more hypo-aroused place. So just
Mhm.
depends on how each person expresses that.
Gotcha. Got it, got it. So, back to a sexual relationship, some of it can be scary. What are some reasons why people might be a little hypo-aroused or hyper-aroused and have difficulty in that getting that
Mhm.
sweet spot in the middle?
Yeah. Well, it depends on the story that you have around sexuality. There's a lot of different reasons. There's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of shame that can come around sexuality depending on what you've learned about sex growing up, what's acceptable, what is safe, what am I expected to do? There can be a lot of pressure involved in that too, especially with having particular outcomes or making it look a certain way, or there's also situations where there is sexual abuse or situations where sex hasn't been safe traditionally. Maybe the introduction of sex wasn't an approachable thing as well. So sometimes it can even if there wasn't a dramatic trauma that happened around sex, it might also just be this isn't allowed. I'm not supposed to talk about this. This is a bad thing. So there's a wide range of why someone might be scared around it or anxious or go outside of their window of tolerance around the topic of sex in general.
Mhm. Then add to that relationship with someone else, their expectations for you, your expectations for yourself,
Mhm.
and whatever. I'm
Mhm.
thinking of a couple I've worked with a while ago where great marriage, great relationship, but she really wanted to have an orgasm. She's pre-orgasmic, which a good percentage of women are. And it's so frustrating because she still feels like she's failing. She's getting
Mhm.
close, she's getting close, she's getting close, but never quite gets there. Sometimes after an hour of trying, and just always feels like, ah, what's the use? They just
Mhm.
want to throw in the towel.
Mhm.
What's going on in that situation?
Well, obviously there's nuance there.
Uh-huh.
And I will say that there's sometimes a paradox, especially if you're wanting to orgasm, there's this expectation of this is what it looks like to succeed. This is what I'm expected of if to do it right or to do it wrong. Right. And there that could put a lot of pressure on us to have a particular outcome. And there's a paradox here because I almost think about the phrase of when we admit that we are not at peace, we become more at peace. There's
Uh-huh.
sort of a how can we recognize that sex doesn't need to look like orgasm and that's the
The
succeeding
be
thing.
all end
That's
all. Uh-huh.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's not necessarily what sex is and has to be. Right? We get to define what that means and ultimately there's a paradox in being able to say I need to be able to surrender to that, and that's probably when it will come. No
Uh-huh.
pun
Yep, pun
intended, but
intended. Uh-huh.
yeah, that's probably will when it will, because there is a need for release and a need for underlying safety, and ultimately, if that safety, it might the amount of pressure that's being put on having this outcome might be actually sabotaging the amount of safety that you have. Because it's like, well, maybe there's a conditional love situation, both to yourself and to the partner. Like maybe you believe that your partner won't love you as much if you don't, or that you're not loving yourself as much if you don't. And so there's this element of not being safe because of that pressure. And that's the very thing that's getting in the way. Just as one way to approach it and think about it. Cause like I said, it's nuanced. So
Got it. Everything you said makes sense, but in the head. But
yes.
in the moment, it's a different experience. Now, you have a program that you have several steps in which you teach people how to learn how to better regulate themselves in that moment.
Mhm.
Would you be willing to share what those steps are?
Sure. Well, again, my program at least and the seven center system that I use with people is customized to each person. A big part of what we do is a proactive nervous system regulation routine in the morning and at night. And I say that because ultimately I think about like playing basketball. If you expected someone to shoot a free throw after never practicing. And so you're putting them into the most pressure situation. You say, okay, now in front of this audience, when you have to make the shot the most, now go ahead and do it. And we wouldn't ever expect a sports player to do that. We
Right.
need practice ahead of time. And so that's why I really promote a proactive nervous system regulation routine. It gets us ahead of triggers. It helps everything just be a little bit easier. So when the time comes, not only have we practiced and put in repetitions ahead of time, we
Mhm.
also are getting ahead of things and feel we're setting ourselves up with more success in the beginning. So that's one just preface to that.
Ooh,
In the
let's go
moment,
there.
yeah.
Just what's part of that daily
Yeah.
practice, morning and
Yeah,
night?
so I recommend because it's customized to each person. I'm definitely not of the belief that there's a cookie cutter routine out there that I often don't share my routine specifically to people
Uh-huh.
because I don't want someone to say, oh, well, that's what she does and she's the expert. So I'm going to go do that because ultimately your routine is going to be different than my routine because of a lot of different factors, right?
Mhm.
So I will say though, this is an exercise I have people do is do a audit of your morning routine and your nightly routine. And some people say, well, I don't have a routine. My kids are doing this and that, and I don't have the thing. Everyone has some sort of anchor of something they do for sure.
Uh-huh.
Brushing their teeth, making tea or coffee in the morning, eating
Uh-huh.
breakfast. Like some of these are basic auditing materials for you.
Mhm.
So I like to think of that as an anchor. Pick 2 to 3 anchors in the morning. So say it's brushing my teeth, making my cup of tea in the morning.
Mhm.
Then I would stack. I like habit stacking. I think it's great. We're building upon neural pathways that are already existing and instead of trying to start from scratch. And we'll add on a nervous system regulation technique to both of those anchor points. So, for example, when you're brushing your teeth in the morning, maybe that means you're humming at the same time while you're brushing your teeth. This helps to stimulate the vagus nerve and helps you activate your parasympathetic nervous system. So, it
Uh-huh.
doesn't need to be this complex, intense, hour-long yoga, hour-long meditation. It's like, how can we implement into our daily routine already, just 5-10 minutes in the morning,
Uh-huh.
stacked upon what we're already doing. Or I really like the orientation practice. So maybe you brush your teeth and you hum in order to activate the vagus nerve. And then while you're waiting for your tea to boil, you're actively orienting to your current time, location, and age. So a lot of our nervous system might not, and our bodies, you might know logically, like, oh, today is this date. Oh, this is how old I am, but sometimes our bodies really don't recognize that. So a lot of the time, what I'll have my clients do is while your water is boiling, you're saying, hey, body, do you know? And I'm tapping as I'm doing this. It's bilateral stimulation that
Uh-huh.
activates both hemispheres of your brain. So for anyone that's listening, I'm kind of alternatively tapping my arms left and right or my collarbones. And I'll say, body, do you know that I'm this old? And just kind of
Mhm.
wait. Body, do you know what resources I have? What
Uh-huh.
safety cues I have. And so orienting to my current time, location, and age and safety cues is another great way to just start your day proactively to get your nervous system regulated. So yeah, those are just a couple examples. Like I said, I've got a whole program that helps you customize it all and
Uh-huh.
lay out what would work for you, but that's just a little sample.
That's great. I'm laughing a bit about humming while brushing teeth. It's like a few weeks ago, my wife and I, we brush our teeth together at night. It's kinda cute. We
Yeah,
tap toothbrushes, we brush
that's so
together,
sweet.
and I don't know why, but we were doing, like, the vocal warm-up exercise, "Ah," like in the choir before you warm
Mhm.
up. We're
Mhm.
just doing it together while brushing our teeth. We're just goofing off. Little did we know, my son had snuck into our room earlier and was hiding under the bed. He's 10 years old. And he's like, "My parents are so weird. What are they doing?"
That's so fun, but I mean, I love that actually because and that can segue at some point
Uh-huh.
to co-regulation because what you're doing is regulating your nervous system with each other. You are being playful and you're in your optimal level of functioning with each other and promoting that
Mhm,
with each other. And then ultimately, I love it because it might have been a little embarrassing in the moment or something, but it's role modeling to your children what healthy connection can look like and
mhm,
playfulness.
uh,
And ultimately, that could be it's not intentionally foreplay, but I think about the ways that in order to have a healthy sexual relationship, we need that foundation of safety.
mhm,
And especially for women, it actually takes a bit longer to build that safety and to have that connection. And that safety can happen all throughout the day, including when you're brushing your teeth together or whatever. It's a longer process. I think sometimes I like to think of men as a microwave and women as an oven. It takes
mhm,
a little bit longer to warm up and develop that safety. And so
mhm,
I love the example of the teeth brushing because it happens in these moments that might not actually be in the bedroom. It might be in the bathroom. It might be while you're picking your kids up from school. Like there's this all this time that is in between that maybe we let pass by or we don't
mhm.
really recognize the significance of that developing safety and a healthy sexual relationship.
Gotcha. So you're saying women take a longer time to feel safety in their bodies compared to men.
I
Is
think
that right?
especially for I more so around because it's nuanced. I don't necessarily
Mhm,
know if there's a strong statistic of safety or not, but more so in the sexual process of getting turned on and having the readiness
mhm,
for sexual activities.
mhm,
A lot of the way I understand women, at least, is that they're much more like a you need to preheat the oven and it takes a little while where a man's a little bit more like a microwave where,
uh-huh.
there's a little bit of a shorter warm up time needed.
Yeah, that's good. Alright, good. That definitely is a stereotype for sure, and a lot of people fit that mold.
Mhm.
Alright, so that's why regulation, self-regulation, and you've introduced the concept of co-regulation together to kinda
Mhm.
help with that.
Mhm.
So that was
Yeah.
step 1, right? Like, find a habit that you're already doing, create a routine that helps stimulate your vagus nerve, for example, like with humming or some
Mhm.
sort of way like bilateral tapping, reminding
Mhm.
yourself how old you are. Those are
Mhm.
suggestions that you have that help kind of bring you to a healthy baseline for
Mhm.
self-regulation.
Mhm.
Is
Yeah,
that step
proactively. Mhm.
proactively, is that step 1?
Yep, I think that that's a great place to start, and I like to tell people to start small and build upon that. Some people really wanna have a whole rebrand of their morning routine and make it look super great and have an hour plus long thing of something. It's like, I would much prefer you to do a 5 or 10-minute situation so that you can continue to build upon that, and it should feel easy before you're adding more onto it. But I will say that there are some really great things that you can do proactively together or in the moment as well. So, not just the kind of proactive nervous system regulation routine, but in terms of developing relationship with each other and safety with each other, there's some really, I love any sort of mirroring
Tell me about
techniques.
that. Mhm,
Yeah. So, your nervous system has evolved to be attuned to other people, especially the most intimate people in your life to their nervous system.
mhm,
So I like to think about it as I mean, as a tribe, when we were all living together in that way, we needed the attunement of if there's danger around, if someone else's nervous system picks up on that, I'm going to be able to pick up on that quickly too. I like to think about if you're at a party, just try it out if you want to do a fun experiment, but go look a certain direction off Often
Uh-huh.
it's watch how many people's nervous systems respond to you. They'll
Mhm.
oh, and everybody's like, "What are you looking at?" And it's such an innate biological evolutionary leftover thing. And we do that in our relationships. We just don't always realize it. So if we do things like mirroring techniques, or just recognizing the attunement that needs to happen
Mhm.
before we just try to get into sexual activities, that can really also be a great addition to establishing safety and having more fun and pleasure involved. So it sounds silly, some of these things to do, but it can actually be really playful and fun if you do it, with someone that you trust and
Uh-huh.
love. So one of the things I like doing is you can sit face to face with each other, cross-legged, however you want to do. You could be
Mhm.
standing up, just face to face, and one person starts to mime or move, and you have to follow that person's movements. And really, it's just getting your bodies and your nervous systems synced up, and it can be playful and fun and get you into a
Yeah.
movement, but you're not touching each other. It's just truly a quite literal mirroring
Uh-huh.
each other's bodies and nervous systems, and that can be a really fun activity, and
Especially if it's
it's
done, like, naked, be really
yeah,
fun.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, you could have a lot of fun with that.
Uh-huh.
And really the key to all of these things that I will talk about is just safety because ultimately we don't need to have a goal at the end of it. It's just establishing like maybe that was the activity that we did that night instead of sex and like just knowing that that is progressing toward a more healthy relationship. As long as we're feeling safe to do that with each other, then that's going to continue to progress toward the right direction. Um, so I really love that. You can hum together. I love what you were talking about for the toothbrushing, but also
Uh-huh.
breathing together and having prolonged eye contact can also be really helpful. I'm
Mhm.
thinking 3 minutes or so, and that can get very emotional too. So again, if there isn't I would say eye contact is actually one of the harder things for people to do, even with
Oh,
people
yeah.
that they see all the time, like, prolonged eye contact can really bring up a lot of intimacy and attachment things, so I would also say it goes on a spectrum of fun, playful, and also challenging hard sometimes, and both of those sides of the spectrum might need to be looked at some point in order to establish more safety depending on the connection of the relationship and how open you are with each other. And so those are just a couple of ideas for kind of attunement and getting to really be synced with your nervous systems together.
Intimacy, or that's the theory around it is, there's 2 human drives. There's a drive for attachment and a drive for autonomy. I
Mm,
wanna belong to someone else while also belonging to myself at the same time.
yep.
And oftentimes, those drives are at odds with each other, especially in an intimate relationship, like a sexual
Mm,
relationship.
mhm.
So, learning how to balance and resolve that paradox sometimes is the work that a lot of couples need to do so that they can have better sexual experiences.
Yeah.
So, as you're talking about eye gazing and all that, it's and whatever, because it requires quite a bit of self regulation to let my spouse look into my eyes.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
that's the autonomy piece, like belonging to myself.
Mhm.
And also it incorporates the attachment piece, letting her matter to me and me matter to her. Another activity I've done with some of my couples is a hugging exercise where the goal is to hug past 3 Mississippi, right? Or 8 Mississippi or whatever.
Yeah.
Can you stat and hug? Because to hug for a long time, well, to where it like where you kind of feel at peace with the whole thing, requires you to settle yourself down. Now that's a
Mm,
skill,
mhm.
like to calm that down, calm that inner self down while also being in relationship to someone else.
Mhm. And
That's
I will keep coming back to safety, safety, safety,
yeah,
safety,
yeah.
because also I actually have a story around hugging
Let's hear it.
myself that when I was young, I would get hugged without my consent. And it created a literal response in my body
Uh-huh.
of
You didn't like being
dysregulation.
hugged.
I
Uh-huh.
did not like being hugged. Oh,
Right.
that
Feel
it would
taken
I
from in
would
the hug.
my
Uh-huh.
body language would get small and I would get shut down and I would say like, "Oh, that doesn't feel consensual. I don't like that."
Yeah.
So, growing up, it didn't actually take until I was my partner in college was the
Uh-huh.
person that would it would be exposure therapy for me. But I had to give consent to that, and I
Mhm.
needed to establish safety of, oh, this can feel good with
Mhm.
someone that I trust and that I'm giving consent to. So I say with any of these things, I've also had negative experiences with eye contact of people staring at me in a way that I did not feel comfortable with or want. And so that kind of stuff can get brought up in these very vulnerable ways with our partners. And so when I keep coming back to safety because that might, like, you might hear us say, "Oh, just do this hugging activity." And for you, that might be something that just shuts you down. So again, talking with your partner around what way can I help you feel safe right now? What way can I update your nervous system and body to help you know this is safe? And it's not just an intellectual safety, it's what does that feel like in my body?
Mhm.
To have my no honored or whatever. You might need to actively push someone away, quite literally physically, to
Uh-huh.
feel like, oh, I have the ability to do that. And for your partner to be like, you do. Like, you can say no to me and that's okay. And there's no
Yeah,
pressure to do this thing because that's what would be a corrective experience for you to feel safe. So I think, like, I keep coming back to just attunement and safety, in the nervous system. So
that's really
just
good.
putting that nuance there. Yeah.
Morgan, I do have a hard time with the word safety, though.
Mm,
Maybe you can help me out. And here's my line of thinking. I 100% agree with you that internally we need to feel safe. Safe, I'm going to define as we talked about kind of being in this green zone, not
mhm.
too hyperactivated or hypoactivated. We're regulated well in that space,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The difficulty I see is sometimes it's I don't feel safe, meaning I've delegated my job to feel safe within me to my spouse or to other
Mm,
people, and you're doing a crap job of it.
mhm.
It's
Mhm.
your job to make me feel safe. I don't
Mm,
feel safe, therefore, I am not going to make an effort to be invested in this relationship, whatever.
mm,
So
mhm.
now it's not just the person now, it's now we're looking at a whole system. Do
Mhm.
you have any ideas on that?
Yeah, so one of the things I work with my clients doing is perceived and actual safety.
Mhm.
No matter what, each person will need to take responsibility of their own nervous system and of their own process. Period.
Yep.
If
Someone
somebody
else can't do
isn't
it for
doing
you.
that, they can't do it for you. They can support and have a container that is helpful for that and offer corrective experiences, especially if in the past you haven't had those positive experiences with other people. So there's a delicacy in terms of needing to be attuned, right? But at the end of the day, it is your system. Nobody else can come inside of you and make those movements and the tweaks needed to happen. So, but I will come back to perceived and actual safety.
Mhm.
So that has been a really needed tool for a lot of my clients to say, because there is actual safety. Like, my body's not going to get harmed right now. Nothing is actually going to happen. There is actual safety in my moment right now, but I perceive that I'm not safe. And so staying curious with that, with your own self of, okay, what ways can I match my perception up with my actual reality? That being said, I like to distinguish that because that is a skill set that we do need to develop, especially if we've had trauma, but also because we don't want to gaslight ourselves and say, "Oh, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe. He says I'm safe, but he's not actually safe." Like, because we do need to distinguish, well, if he's forcing you to do something that you don't want to do and he's like, "No, no, I'm safe." Right? Then it's like, well, is that actually safe? So a big thing is I tell my clients, I don't want you to lie to yourself or lie to your nervous systems because we can't regulate away an abusive relationship, or we
Right.
can't, we need to have an attuned practice of what is actual safety and what is perceived safety, and vice
Perfect.
versa for danger, right? Like, if you're in actual danger, you do need to get out of it, right?
Right.
And so we don't want to just say, try to do, okay, I'm doing all these tapping exercises and I still don't feel safe. It's like, well, I just need to make sure that you're in actual safety before we can't regulate away something that's
Yeah, right.
not safe, you
Right.
know? Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, reality matters here. Right.
Exactly, exactly, and I know that that's hard when someone has had it experienced before, that, like, that perception, that perceived safety is a really hard skill, and ultimately that's where people like us come in, or your therapist comes in to talk through, what is the actual versus perceived safety in that situation, and it's a skill set to develop, to learn that.
Morgan, I love that answer. That's
Mm.
fantastic.
Mm.
That's good.
Mhm.
All right. Can you give us a quick overview of your additional steps that
Mm.
in your multi-step program?
In my system?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yes.
so we've got the proactive nervous system regulation techniques, and it's a whole I mean, it's a 6-month program, so it's gonna be hard to really go into all the details here, but one of the big pieces that I help people do is to isolate certain patterns. So if there's a pattern that's coming up in the relationship here of, "Okay, every time I initiate something, she shuts down." Okay, what's this bigger pattern that we can just isolate and look at for a moment, and then we look at what's the underlying need that's trying to get met here. So there's a whole process of pairing that with nervous system regulation that's customized per person. But the big philosophy of the model is that we are we're not trying to sabotage, we're not trying to be bad or we want acceptance and love and joy, and there's positive intentions behind every pattern that we continue to repeat. And so getting down to that underlying need that is trying to get met through that and the positive intention that's trying to get met can really help to transform us from a place of judgment and pressure and all this to a place of compassion and curiosity and more love because, oh, if I can understand both, from my own process and maybe understand from my partner's perspective, she's shutting down because she doesn't feel safe and ultimately shutting down is going to help her feel safe. Okay, so the underlying need that's trying to get met here is safety. She's trying to get a need of safety met. So then instead of us trying to get toward why isn't she orgasming? Why isn't she letting me do this? It would be, how can I help you feel safe? How can I help that underlying need get met? And then the sort of third step to this all is creating corrective experiences. So it might feel safe for her to say no and push you away however many times she needs. And
Uh-huh.
that might feel counterintuitive. But
Uh-huh.
if that's a corrective experience for her to say, I feel safe, I know that you're going to honor my no, that actually might, in the end, create a lot more actual rewiring of that pattern to say, "Oh, in today's world, I can say no. I have new choices. I have new power. I am safe. I can feel that in my body with you." And then we can actually move on to a different pattern. And so that's the quick and rough version of it.
Gotcha.
Because, like I said, it's a whole process with each person, but those are kind of the major steps.
Very good. So, create rituals where you can regulate yourself better uh, regularly so you have a good baseline. Learn what safe feels like. Learn what not safe feels like so you can take those corrective actions. Look for
Mhm.
patterns, isolate them, understand them, try to figure out what the underlying missing needs are and provide for them. And then just build on top of all of that and
Mhm.
like positive momentum, just
Yep.
getting better and better.
Yeah, and I guess another thing that I'll share that's sort of another prong of the model that I use with people is that I'm big into making daily practices happen
Mhm.
outside of sessions because so many of us we hold on to that thing and then we go to our couple sessions and then we unload it there, or we don't have things in our day to day that we're actually integrating what we know. And so I'm really big on bridging that insight to action gap. And so one of the ways that I help people do that is we have 7 different focuses, 7 different pillars of our holistic health that we focus on each day of the week. So on Mondays, for example, we're focusing on our physical health, our maybe that's the day that we go to the gym together. Maybe that's the day that we collectively clean up the house together. We're focusing on physical safety and physical our relationship with our bodies. Maybe this is a day that we have a nice dinner together. So we're theming our days essentially with holistic pillars of our health. And so I walk that through like the whole curriculum and everything of like what the different pillars are. But then, so Tuesdays, for example, might be a day that we are a little bit more sexual, sensual, creative. Like maybe
Mhm.
that's a day that we have a date night. So we sort of theme each day
Mhm.
on these bigger holistic pillars of our health. So that's another portion of the system that I created as well, is to really use that as a way to know what to focus on each day so that we're
Uh-huh.
not just like, what it's a way to organize things and keeps it fun and novel too,
Uh-huh.
while also looking at our holistic health in general, so that it's not just like hyper fixating on one problem or one thing. We can kind of look at the big breadth of life together. And so on Sundays, naturally, that's more of a spiritual day. So maybe we go to church together, maybe we have our spiritual practice together. And so we have different themes each day that we look at and helps us really integrate into the day to day.
I like that. That's really good. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Any other advice for someone who does find just the sexual experience a little unnerving, a little dysregulating?
Mhm.
It may not be trauma, it's just the idea of it. Any advice for them?
Well, it truly is the most natural thing that exists on the planet. It really is. I know there's a lot of stories around what that means and what it should look like, and I just think back to the most ancient times that it's such a foundation to evolution. So I like to strip away some of those stories and think about us kind of as animals a little bit, which is like a little silly for some people, but
Gotcha.
I
So
think about
go
it, yeah.
raw
Yeah.
like a dog. Like,
Yeah, there you go.
go
Full
go strip
circle.
it way
And
back. I
this is
see.
why I was in the New York Times, yes. No, no. Yeah, I think just, like, helping distill down to, like, an objective this is such an ancient thing that we've done as humans, and, yeah, I don't know, that there's lots of stories around what it should look like, and I'm like, "Well, there's so much of time that, has is under our belt as humans with this topic and so many different stories that can be made around it. Yeah, and I'll say that I've struggled with this throughout my life, especially before the nervous system regulation work that I did. Yeah, growing up, this was a really hard topic for me to know, and truly getting to know your own self in it. I really am a supporter of getting to know what feels good for you and getting to know your own relationship with your sexuality outside of relationship with your partner,
Yeah.
because that in itself really creates a strong foundation of being able to help someone else navigate your system and your body. And so I would even suggest having times without someone else to really get to know yourself on a more
Mhm.
intimate level, because for some people they've only known what it's like with someone else.
Right.
And so I would say that that can be a really needed training ground for someone else to be able to know how to please you, how to make you feel safe. It really does start internally as well.
That's
That would be
good.
another
That
thing to
is
say.
so good. That's great.
Mhm. Mhm.
Where can people go to learn more about you and your work?
Yeah. So my handle across all social medias is Mind's Eye Guidance. It's MIND period PSY period guidance. And if you want to learn about my system and the model I talked about, it's Seven Center System. So you can either Google that, things will come up, but there's sevencentersystem.com as well to, yeah, learn more. And there's lots of information on there. So yeah.
Awesome. Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It was fun to talk about. It's amazing how the time flies.
So, what do you think? Are you going to try some of these techniques in your home? I hope so. Now, if you'd like some help applying the things we talk about in this episode and in this whole podcast, I would love to be your coach. And then what coaching looks like is we meet over Zoom, whether it's privately or in a small group setting. Me and my team will work with you to help you improve intimacy in your marriage. I work with couples who are in otherwise happy marriages, but wish things were better when it came to intimacy. And that's something that we specialize in. We're also specialists when it comes to helping couples work through a sexual desire discrepancy in their marriage. All that information is on our website at getyourmarriageon.com/program, and you can try it for free for 30 days for a limited time because you're a listener of this podcast. So check it out. Meanwhile, please share this podcast episode with your friends. I promise they will thank you for life, and now go get your marriage on.